Right now you're probably pretty sick of the word Brexit. All you have to do in the UK right now is turn on the TV and more often than not you're going to hear some story or some headline about what recently has been happening with Brexit. There's actually recently been some suggestion that people can actually suffer from what's been commonly known as Brexit anxiety. But what exactly is Brexit anxiety all about, and is it really a real thing? Hey guys, welcome to another week's episode of GetPsyched, and like I said, this week we're going to be taking a look at Brexit anxiety. Now, I just want to reiterate something here. Brexit anxiety is not a diagnosable term. It's not something that is being empirically researched, for example. It's more a suggestion, and it's a term that's being given to people that are feeling anxious or showing symptoms of anxiety as a result of Brexit. So let's go into a little bit more detail. What exactly is Brexit anxiety? Well, I'm assuming that pretty much all of us know what Brexit is. In 2016, the UK voted in a referendum to leave the European Union. Now, since then, there's been massive uncertainties and a lot of contradictions being made over 3 years. So there's been so much uncertainty going on in the news, in political climates, and in economic climates as well, as a result of what Brexit might bring. 3 years later, dates have changed, leave dates have changed, new referendums have been suggested, and new political parties have even been formed. So you can start to understand that there really has never been a time like this that has involved so much political uncertainty and so much fluctuation, or potential fluctuation rather, in an economic climate. Therapist Sally Brown actually states that Brexit is much like a divorce, and if you think of the analogy of a divorce, I actually quite like this analogy. I think it makes a lot of sense. If you think of the citizens of the United Kingdom as the children involved in that divorce party, if you think of the UK as the mother, as the EU as the father perhaps, you can start to understand a little bit about how this dynamic or how this situation is evolving to create some real anxieties for people living in the UK. Now, we can all understand that analogy. We can all probably accept that, yeah, okay, it's not the most ideal situation right now. It's pretty uncertain. We don't really know what's going to happen. But a recent study conducted by the British Association of Counselling and Psychotherapy actually conducted a study with 5,700 participants that saw that 1 in 3 people were actually exhibiting signs of anxiety directly attributed to uncertainties around Brexit. And in addition to this report, the BACP actually publicised some qualitative interviews that they'd conducted with therapists around the UK, and some therapists were actually stating that over half of their clients over the past year have discussed elements of uncertainties around Brexit. We're starting to see more and more that people are really exhibiting signs of anxiety as a result of Brexit. Feelings of a lack of control, impending doom even, and vast uncertainty have been some of the symptomologies that those qualitative reports have shown that therapists are saying that their clients are bringing as a result of those uncertainties. So perhaps the next thing that we need to ask is, is Brexit anxiety actually a real thing? Is it a diagnosable term? Well, the first thing is right now, absolutely not. It's not something that you can be diagnosed with as such. But I do think that there is some weight behind this. I do think that there is something to suggest that there is definitive evidence, or there's some suggestion at least, to state that anxiety and anxious symptoms can result and can increase as a result of Brexit. The NHS define anxiety as a feeling of worry or fear or lack of control to the point where we no longer feel in control of the things around us. That's a very, very general form of a definition of anxiety, but we can start to understand a little bit about how this attributes to Brexit. If we also think of one of the key characteristics to anxiety being the intolerance of uncertainty, we can start to again see how this correlates. The intolerance of uncertainty is basically, as it sounds, how tolerant can you be of a situation or a circumstance that is uncertain? If you can be tolerant of the fact that you can go outside and don't know if you're going to get hit by a bus or not, if you're tolerant of that, the likelihood is that you're not going to be that anxious. However, if you cannot tolerate the unknown of any situation, then the likelihood is that your anxiety will increase. So when you think about Brexit being a vastly uncertain situation, there's a lot of people that aren't very tolerant of that, and as a result their anxiety can increase. I think it's clear then that the Brexit situation can at least add fuel to anxious symptoms, or people that have experienced anxiety in the past or currently can see Brexit as a pattern that actually develops their anxiety to a greater extent. Perhaps then we can argue that Brexit is like a powerful contributor rather than a diagnosable Brexit anxiety. Perhaps it's just a really powerful contributor to anxious symptoms. So the final question that we maybe want to ask is, what exactly can we do about so-called Brexit anxiety? Now, the first thing we have to say here is that it's very difficult to bring certainty to external situations that we have absolutely no control over. For example, I can't sit here and say, just pretend that everything's going to be okay, or try and make Brexit work for you. All those kind of things aren't really going to matter that much because the external situation is still so uncertain, and we have very limited agency as an individual to actually do something about it. The day before the UK was due to leave in March 28, 2019, BBC Radio 4 conducted some interviews with psychotherapists and GPs, and one of those GPs stated that one of the ways in which you can alleviate Brexit anxiety is to take control of the things that are controllable in your life. Things such as sleeping patterns and eating patterns and exercise regimes, all of these things that you can autonomously show agency with when you're trying to elevate and bring elements of control into your life, you can utilize these things. You can check in with your sleep pattern, your eating patterns, and your exercise regimes, and try and take real control of the things that you can control. I agree in so many ways, and I know that sometimes these patterns or these suggestions can actually seem a bit mundane and things that we do already, but you'd be surprised at how much taking more agency with the smaller things in your life can actually alleviate anxiety or anxious symptoms on a larger scale. Okay guys, thanks so much for watching this week's episode of GetPsyched. This week we've been doing something a little bit different, and we've taken a look at what Brexit anxiety is all about. Guys, if you've been enjoying GetPsyched, then make sure to subscribe to the channel. You can hit that little bell next to the subscribe button and you'll get weekly reminders every time I upload. If you've been enjoying this video as well, then make sure to comment, like and share, and hopefully I'll catch you next week.